Good evening. That's right. Good for play tennis. This is from Plato's Republic, and he has a natures of the soul, and there's 5 types of souls he classifies that each have a corresponding government that goes with them. And also for each soul, there is a city and there's an individual of these 5 souls. Some of you have read Republic. It's a great work of Plato's with regard to laying out the very essence of the Constitution and what a Constitution would be. A Constitution that would govern people would have to reflect how they are constituted. How the person is constituted that you're governing, you should know their nature in order to govern them, in order to lead them to what their nature would be. He starts off, see if you can recognize the person he's talking about here. This is called the soul of a Democrat. And it's a democratic constitution and the person within this type of constitution. He lives on yielding day by day to the desire at hand. Sometimes he drinks heavily while listening to the flute. At other times he drinks only water and is on a diet. Sometimes he goes in for physical trainings. At other times he's idle and neglects everything. And sometimes he even occupies himself with what he takes to be philosophy. He often engages in politics, leaping up from his seat and saying and doing whatever comes to his mind. If he happens to admire soldiers, he's carried in that direction. If money making, in that one. There's neither order nor necessity in his life, but he calls it pleasant, free, blessedly happy, and he follows it for as long as he lives. You know such a person? Sometimes he drinks heavily while listening to the flute. What's before they had electricity? So basically they're always wired and they're always listening to what? Other times he drinks only water and is on a diet. Sometimes he goes in for physical training. How long does that last? It gives you this characterization picture. You know this person? You ever get drunk, wake up the next day and swear off of what? I'm never going to do that again. I'm going to get in shape this week. I'll go on a water diet. I'll lose what? Wrestlers ought to know about water diets. These words are from Plato and are found in Book 8 of Republic, in which the constitutions of the democratic city and the soul of the democratic man are described. Of the 5 constitutions in the city-states of Republic and the individuals housed within each, which are presented in descending order from the highest to the lowest, the democratic state is the 4th from the top, 1 step away from tyranny, which is a city-state ruled by erotic love. Plato understands the soul to be tripart: reason, spirit, and desire. Reason and desire are the rational and irrational parts of the soul. The former calculates and the latter lusts, hungers, thirsts, and gets excited by the appetites. Man by nature has an end, a telos, at which he must aim if he is to be fulfilled. Man's end is known by reason. He is a creature who lives by ideas. A just man, a man in full, is governed by the rational part of his soul, which directs him to act in a virtuous manner, such that every part of him performs its proper function, while reason controls the inferior parts of his nature, his desires. The just state is realized when a person is performing his proper function and not meddling where he does not belong. He's in the proper order. So his desires are not ruling, but the intellect, moved by the rational principle in the Republic, thou shalt not return a harm with a harm, is a rational principle they're looking at. Plato thinks a human being is not an animal by nature, but part of us is like an animal. Let me explain. A Gordon setter is by nature a soft-mouthed dog, ideal for retrieving birds because it does not sink its teeth into the bird. The Gordon setter is very alert, interested, and aggressive. It is a responsive gun dog and an eager to please dog in the home. A Gordon setter will not naturally retrieve birds, but can easily be trained to do so because it's within its potential to do so. If that is, the Gordon setter has a trainer. For example, a pit bull by nature would not make a good dog for retrieving birds because the nature of its mouth is not soft. Man is like an animal in that he also needs instruction to reach his potential. Man, like a dog, comes in a variety of breeds. However, being well bred for man is different than having a pedigree of a Gordon setter. Man's pedigree is revealed by the performance of his function, which has been handed down to him in the stories of his virtuous ancestors. Like a Gordon setter, man does not inherit his pedigree. It is something he achieves by performing his function. Each person has a variety of functions. If he's a cobbler, the example they use, we were reading, this is 25 centuries and 24 centuries ago, he makes shoes. And if he's a virtuous cobbler, he makes good shoes. A cobbler has a variety of functions: husband, father, soldier, neighbor, and friend. Man as a cobbler is a creature who becomes himself or not in his relationship with the leather and his community. Which brings us back to the soul of a Democrat, a free spirit whose soul is not guided by moral principle. He lacks the ability to distinguish between higher and lower, right from wrong, and good and evil. In a democratic soul, reason is the handmaiden of desire, the inferior part of man's nature. Thus he lives on, kneeling day by the desire at hand. Whatever pops up, that's where he goes. If he's into exercising, so be it. Party tonight? Hard. Hey, it's your freshman year, you're free, you might as well. What? Go for it. 2 o'clock, you wake up, well, you know what happens. The democratic soul uses his intellect to rationalize whatever his desire craves at the moment. He cannot discriminate between necessary and unnecessary desires. In effect, each desire has a say, and all desires are treated as equal. This is the soul Plato ironically describes as being a pleasant constitution which lacks rulers but not variety, which distributes a sort of equality to both equals and unequals alike. All the desires are treated equal, unequal and equals are treated alike, which means all desires get to have a say. And which one wins? Whichever desire is strongest at the moment. The democratic city is similar to the democratic soul. Everyone is treated equally. At first glance, it seems to be a fine constitution, like a coat embroidered with every kind of ornament, because it has every kind of character type. With such diversity, could it be anything but wonderful? However, in the city and the souls which live by the idea of treating equals and unequals alike, condemned criminals walk about freely. Foreigners have the rights of citizens, but the obligations of the citizens to vote or serve on juries and the military are such that they may or do not have to, depending on how they feel. The democratic soul turns inward and neglects its public responsibility. In fact, it does not have a sense of community. It has nothing in common with those within the city other than being guided by the desires which cry to be heard and felt and need to be satisfied. The democratic father, for example, refuses to accept the guiding principle into his soul, as it would be an infringement upon the equality of his children's right to fulfill their immediate desires. Thus, quoting Plato, a father accustoms himself to behave like a child and fears his sons, while his sons behave like a father, feeling neither shame nor fear in front of their parents in order to be free. So what's a family look like? Imagine letting the children pick out what the menu of the week would be and then go shopping and all have an equal vote, and you have 4 children. What will the week look like? All desires being equal. The democratic soul sees freedom as being free from as opposed to free to. So he is free from responsibility and does as he feels at the moment. It is important to notice that the father behaves like a child. The emphasis is on behave, as a father does not act. For to act, one needs to know what he is doing, making him the author of his act. The democratic father behaves because he is motivated by desire and not by principle. He exercises until it becomes painful, boring, or another desire clamors to be satisfied. The son behaves like a father. He does not act like a father, but becomes a father because of his demanding nature or authority, of the adolescent's desires rising up in his soul at any moment. As the son is defiant of authority, all tradition, the ways of his ancestor, is denied as being outdated and confining to his freedom to serve his desires. The democratic father fares equally, the democratic teacher forms equally as well as his father. And I quote, "A teacher in a community is afraid of his students and flatters them while the students despise their teachers." Imagine such a school where the teachers despise, the students despise their teachers, and the teachers are afraid of their students. So what kind of classes would they be? Should we bring you donuts and oranges and do student evaluations, or what should we do? Huh? You're the best class of students I think I've ever seen. Let me tell you my experience with the 20th century. You guys with techno are just fabulous. What? Hey, you got it. You're the man. You got technology, the wonders at your finger, everything. Microsoft for you. You're the next generation. That'll be on the test. The democratic ruler ascends in authority in order to gain his position. The democratic ruler ascends in authority in order to gain his position. Need only tell the citizens that he wishes the majority well. That's your, I wish the majority well. So you always got, if you're in political science, you got to always figure out who's the what. Good. Majority, and then you tell them what, when they do a survey before, find out what the majority think, and then create your platform that will do what? Go with the majority, and you will. It's only 50.01, right? And you got the what? You got the day. Now, are you right or wrong? No, it's just that you have the majority of the desires. Which means the citizen of the democratic state will be free to continue whatever they desire, be it reading Milton or looking at website pornography, being faithfully married or committing adultery, paying taxes or not, having children or aborted babies, helping the sick and aging or euthanizing them. It is all the same. Plato. Thus, the person who is honored and considered clever and wise in important matters by such badly governed cities is the one who serves them most pleasantly, indulges them, flatters them, anticipates their wishes, and is clever in fulfilling them. So you watch the beast and you do what? Play to its what?
Desires.
Desires. The soul of the democratic man is in turmoil as reason is subservient to a multitude of desires. Unrestrained by the virtues of moderation and above authority, the words which correctly name the virtues have been distorted by this character. Quoting Plato, doing battle and controlling things themselves, won't they call reverence foolishness and moderation cowardice? Abusing them and casting them out beyond the frontiers like disenfranchised exiles. And won't they persuade the young man that measured and orderly expenditures is boorish and mean? And joining with many useless desires, won't they expel it across the borders? They proceed to return insolence, anarchy, extravagance, and shamelessness from exile and give them fine names, calling insolence good breeding, anarchy freedom, extravagance magnificence, and shamelessness courage. In other words, what happens to the language? It just flips. What we now have is an uncontrollable adolescence, refusing authority and revering nothing. The distortions of the head visit the body. As he ages, lacking self-control, his health deteriorates. So he thinks the functions of a physician is to restore that which is abused. All the money is spent on healing is of no use. So he ends up blaming the abysmal quality of physicians as the source of his feeling ill. And I quote, "Isn't it amusing that they consider their worst enemy to be the person who tells them the truth? Namely, that until they give up drunkenness, overeating, lechery, and idleness, no medicine, cattery, surgery, charm, or amulet, or anything else of any kind will do them any good." Keep in mind, this is 24 centuries ago. The democratic soul is obsessed with the idea of tolerance, which becomes a virtue. So it naively treats all desires as deserving equal attention. This is the intellectual position, however, when the desire has replaced right-minded reason in the soul. What the head thinks to be the case is secondary to the demands of the body. So while the head is tolerant of all desires being equal, the depraved desire of erotic love, the antithesis of philosophy, which is the love of wisdom, consumes the soul. The element of authority is impotent in the soul of the Democrat. I quote, "He's idle and neglects everything, and sometimes even occupies himself with what he takes to be philosophy." The perversion of a democratic attempt at philosophy is seen when Glaucon, Polemarchus, Adimantus, and Thrasymachus, and the other young men in the dialogue, as reasonable men, distort an ancient proverb, "Friends have all things in common," to deduce that women and children are possessions that friends ought to share in common. These fellows sitting on, they figure this out. Under the spell of erotic love, they further decide that the best men, which they assume themselves to be, ought to have sex with the best women as frequently as possible. To keep the women from becoming attached to their children, which is the natural way to act, one would assume, the women are treated as equals and are now share occupations alongside the men. Their children, the best men and the best women, are housed in a rearing pen to ensure that no mother knows her child. True to form, the children of the worst parents are left outside of the rearing pen to die. The father is oblivious to his children, as those driven by erotic love feel no responsible for the offsprings of their actions. The final descent in the tyrannical nature of erotic love is seen in the configuration and the confrontation between Socrates and Glaucon, the pedophiliac, to show how the egalitarian soul is caught in a swoon before the object which consumes its insatiable lust. Socrates asked Glaucon, "And isn't it appropriate for an erotically inclined man to forget that all the boys in the bloom of youth pique the interest of a lover of boys and arouse him so that all seem worthy of his care and pleasure? Or isn't it the way you people behave with fine and beautiful boys? You praise a snub-nosed one as cute, a hook-nosed one you say is regal, one in between is well-proportioned, dark ones look manly, and pale ones are the children of the gods. And as for the honey-colored boy, do you think that every term is anything but a euphemism, coinage of a lover who found it easy to tolerate shallowness, provided it was accompanied by the bloom of youth? In other words, you find all kinds of terms and excuses so as not to reject anyone whose flower is in bloom." Such is the destructive nature of erotic love. First, it destroys the love between man and woman, then turns woman into a common possession, and resolves the dilemma of unwanted children by lodging them in rearing pens. And finally, erotic love accepts the sterile act of fornication with the same sex as Glaucon's homosexual passion for any boy and the bloom of youth. There's no discrimination. At this point, the descent of the democratic soul is complete. Extreme freedom cannot be expected to lead to anything but to extreme slavery, whether for a private individual or for a city. All the desires being equal, the strongest one ends up and destroys them all. This type of democracy is not a virtuous form of government in as much as it is one step away from tyranny, lacking self-restraint and transfixed by the idea of equality of both equals and unequals alike. The soul is fraction, each appetite having a will and clamoring to be heard. Ultimately, the strongest desire of erotic love gives license to mad sensuality, having its way in the soul that is a slave to its mad masters. So the creature becomes simply a slave. to passion.
Makes some pretty good points.
Pardon? For instance, it's the characterization of one of the five souls. You just lay, there's the other souls that lay them out, but where the end is property, where the end is honor, where the end is virtue, and the last one is the tyrannical one, which is purely erotic love. And it's one step away. Democracy in this sense, where everything's treated absolutely equal, so there's no standards of judgment whatsoever. And this is one step away from the tyrant just swoops in and what happens then to your country. Questions?
So the best city is Socratic city, is that what it is?
What's the aristocratic? Right.
So the Democratic, it seems that there really can be no passion. So like there can't be really much passion at all, and without, you can't act on passion at all, is how I see it.
Well, you can act on a passion, but the passion is short-lived because once we all live by desires. We have our desires. Once your desires fulfill, like you have a desire to drink. Now, when you drink and then that passion satisfied, then which desire hops up next? You go with the next one that hops up. And more than that, it's not as though each one of your desires is a person. So how many desires do we have in us? 2, 3. Mocha Java latte with a skin with a sprinkle. That becomes a passion. And the next moment, what you're passionate for. What channel? How many channels do you need? You know, how many heads are in a person, in other words? Each desire is clamoring and screaming out for something at the moment. And so if you appease it, then once it's satisfied, what happens to that passion? Burns out, and another one pops up.
Whack-a-mole.
Huh?
It's like whack-a-mole.
Yeah. Now one pops up. That's what he's describing as he goes forth. Yes.
Well, I was just gonna ask this, it's been a while since I had a freshman year philosophy, but from my read, if this is the democratic soul, then how can we achieve the aristocratic soul?
The aristocratic soul is the one who's been educated, but it's going through the virtues. So you learn different virtues. The primary virtue you have to have is self-control. And that comes with Aristotle the same way, but you learn that as a youngster. When you're upbringing, you have manners, you learn to control yourself. The aristocratic soul is capable of performing its function. It's the studious person. It's the person who goes after the virtues, honesty, dignity, reverence, things of this nature. But also what happens, ironically, the aristocratic soul can govern itself. It has control over its own desires, which means in the end, if you need government, you know, if you have a nation of people who control themselves, you don't need any government. Basically, laws are set up for people who cannot govern themselves. The aristocratic soul, given they can govern themselves, plus they see their obligation if they're aristocrat to take care of who? With their talents.
The community.
They serve their community. Because they have the means of taking the people to a point where they can control themselves. Education's function is to raise people to control themselves, control their passions, love them, their order.
So my question is, why do they call it the democratic? Is it because I guess I took philosophy, but are these ancient ideologies or something?
Well, they're doing your order of stuff. It's democratic. It's nothing like a democratic form of government like we have. It's not a form of government, but it's that thing you're treating all your desires as equal, unequal.
And referring to desire, but did like people vote on that or something?
No, there wasn't. It has nothing to do with the political voting of things. But if he's not talking, when we have a constitution, we use democracy in the majority. In certain cases, you have a constitution that legislates how the Congress is set up on going to vote. Here it simply means all desires are treated equally. You just go with the passion of the moment. But then when your community, if you were to govern like this, you just let the desires of the moment try to govern the city. Well, you just have people pop up and they have this special interest group and all these special interest groups. So after a while, you're trying to, the leader is trying to appease them all as a majority. And what ends up in the whole country then?
Wouldn't a majority vote and it wouldn't matter who thought what? Or and everyone just voted as a thing.
When they voted, but the passion of the moment, in America, you see, for example, if we were to take America and divide us all up in ethnicity, and all our different ethnicities, and every ethnicity we put off in a little group by itself, so how many people and groups and cultures do we have in no time at all? Tens of thousands. And now if you try to let, they all govern themselves, what kind of nation, what kind of unity would you ever have as a community? You'd have none, because all you'd have is each special interest group vying for what?
Their own group.
Their own group. So the truckers have one, the bikers have another. The college professors have a little bitty one. Which words of the state, and every culture demands their freedom, and you got 200,000 of them in America. More than that. And so what's a nation start to look like, is Plato's point? What happens with people to a sense of community?
Falls apart.
Falls apart. One of my friends from Columbia went to get a license, and he just moved to the country. He went to get a license, and down at the motor bureau, and he put down the license. He wrote down, the guy gave it back and says, "No, you're not white. You're Hispanic." The guy, "What do you mean? What's Hispanic?" He didn't know what Hispanic meant. He said, "Well, you're like a Mexican." He said, "I'm a Colombian. I'm not a Mexican." The clerks already identified everybody. You think it's some kind of petting zoo. You look at everybody and give them their qualities, and you mark them all off and put them in boxes, and you then treat them equally. The last thing you ever see is a person. All you see is what then? Only little categories of gifts. Did you ever see Juan? Amadía, pues hablar español ni una palabra, gringo, ¿ah? Qué lástima, entonces, ¿puedo hablar? Usted un poquito, ¿puedo hablar? No, no puede. Yo también. Sí, ¿verdad? Well, the point is, it's not, it's every desire in you deserves to be heard. So which the one at the moment? You want to be out of here, you're extremely bored, you're ready for a drink. So it's popping up.
Why would they all be equals?
Well, because they're all equal in the sense, all your desires being equal means that they'll have an equal voice. And the one that is screaming the loudest at the moment, it's the one that's going to be heard, because it's doing what to the other ones? Screaming them down, shouting them down, until it wears out, the next one pops up and starts screaming. And you got to treat them, you're supposed to treat them all equally, which makes you what kind of person, and this is your life, and this is how you are in the moment.
Chaotic.
It's just chaotic. So you're getting overweight, you go, "Oh, I gotta go on a water diet." You do that for a while, and that just lasts about how long? About 4 days, then you go back to eating. Then you go out and you just get drunk, really bad. You know, it happens here. I can remember one day, but anyway, you just do things that are radiant, and the next thing is, I gotta quit drinking. I can't go on like this, and make it all the way to about 3 o'clock, and what happens? Well, one of my sons said, "Why go drinking time? Twist my arm." "Oh, that's enough." And next thing he said, "I gotta get in shape. This is gonna be my best semester ever." And what the hell happens in 4 minutes, 4 hours, a week later? What happens to you?
Netflix.
Because what happens to your desires? It just, you treat all channels, all Netflix news the same. Pretty soon you're watching one. The movie in your house, and the minute you start watching. So why do you sit there? Because your desire at the moment is to what? You gotta chill, 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 chill. So chill's doing what to your soul? Huh?
Just taking over.
You're taking it. So you treat everything desire. So can you stop what you're desiring at the moment? Hmm?
Do you have a desire to the contrary? It is a,
Well, then that means some kind of control, but the
That
desire to the
desire.
contrary.
sure. How can, why can?
Well, the one who,
What's the
he drank too much, so the desire to the contrary was what? To sober up by drinking water. And then he gets water, he gets real balanced. Well, what happens? Blood light, blood light, blood light. What starts happening? What starts happening? Blood light, blood light.
So are you describing compulsion or desire?
Well, all your desires come up, they just rise up in you. And if you treat them all equally, you have no control or mastery over any of them. So they do what at the end of the moment? So they take over.
Any
Your
rationale.
free will, because
Pardon?
your free will, because compulsion is to not decide.
You have no free will at this point whatsoever. You just respond to desire. So taking your kids to the grocery store and letting them pick out all the food they want to eat. Are they rational? Well, some people are more raising, but what are they gonna pick?
Rules.
Huh?
Candy.
Candy.
Ice cream.
But that's because they haven't been raised yet, they're ordered. Any other questions? You have one?
It's kind of an answer.
Huh?
At what point then does the democratic soul descend into tyrannical one?
Well, eventually, out of irreverence to his parents, for example, Socrates points out that Plato says there's a tyrannical soul in everyone, which really levels the field really quick. And he talks about, you want to see a tyrannical soul? And he's an example of a person who has dreams. Dreams in the nature where they sleep with their mother, they chop off somebody's arm, they do these horrific things in their dreams. And he says these things come alive in sleep. Anybody have ever had a dream of something this gross and testing happens that you see, you go, my God, did it wake you up out of a dream? You see something? So there's this element in you. If this were to come out in broad daylight, what would we all look like? And what only keeps us in place for most of us is we just fear other people seeing us doing this, which is enough to keep us in one.
Order.
Huh?
Order.
Order. Just the social pressure will keep you right in check. With the tyrannical soul, their nightmares become realities and they start doing what? Pardon?
Moving.
They just possess them. And a tyrannical person, for example, kills his father, takes over the kingdom. Let's think of that nature. Slaps their mother. Complete disrespect for their parents, beat them, burn their house down, just leave. The tyrannical government, he says, what they do in order to get a people with them, they always have to promise something like they're going to say, there'll be distribution of land because the majority is poor. And we're going to redo the currency, we're going to give you wealth and things of this nature once I'm in power. And once they get in power, what they do is they create an army to protect themselves. And what happens to the citizens? For example, Russia right now. What happens when the tyrant takes over? The army is not there to protect the nation. The army protects who?
Tyrant.
The tyrant from the people. Then the tyrant spreads the force by taking whom? Expand their borders by taking the innocent. What kind of resistance the tyrant can meet with such force? While we watch. While we watch. And the tyrant does what? This has happened through history. They went in to liberate the German people and to start taking countries. Well, the English watched and said, no, he won't take any more. And then they found out, oh my God, he's coming after us. And then we grew up. Well, he's a madman. That's not in us. You don't understand ideas. You don't understand why people do things. You don't understand tyranny. There's the people who want to do what to you? Eat you. You don't think it's real?
Are you saying every tyrant wants to eat? So
Well, it's figurative language. He wants to destroy completely ignorant people, and they'll torture or rape, but when they go through the horrific things happen, you'll find afterward.
So, what if in your example, the tyrant, to use your language, doesn't do those things?
Well, if he's not a tyrant, then he's not doing those things. He's not tyrannical.
Well, what if he
He's
destroys-
controlling his
What
tyrant.
if he destroys the other nation? He kills the people.
Pardon?
What if he does attack them? But he doesn't commit the war crimes you described?
Like,
He commits no war crime.
an example I'm using now is Ukraine. Is he correct? Is he doing a war crime right now?
Are you using that example? So what if there was no war crime? Say you're at war with another nation. Say America's at war, which we're not. Right? Now, are we allowed to commit war crime?
But if we're not at war, you couldn't commit a war crime if you were at war.
if we were at war.
Well,
It's not a crime to kill someone at war, if it's your enemy.
Or if it's your enemy. The question is, for example, using an example of Ukraine. This is a maneuver where is this a complete, is this a takeover? Is this a defensive war? Or is he simply going offensive and just taking them with no provocation whatsoever?
Why would a nation go on the offensive if they're not on the defensive?
Russia right now is on offensive, and they have been not attacked at all. They're simply expanding their borders by taking group.
Perhaps they were attacked. I don't know why or why not anyone did
You
it.
see, you have to use historical examples and use examples that are real examples to make a case.
Sure, like if there's an operative caught in the Russian border, it may have been seen as an act of war, perhaps, as an example.
But that's not what's happening.
That's not what happened. I don't know.
But you have to have examples that are just not fictions, that have to be, I mean, actual examples you can work with.
I think maybe one danger is that, like a defensive war can easily turn into a tyrannical form. I mean, it's like war crimes, for example, which are just inherent in war. So although a nation may go to war in defense, say, like World War II, for example, America definitely very defensively in that war. But at the same time, Dresden, that sort of thing, like things just, is there a point where there can be two tyrannical forces?
Oh, yeah, like I was thinking of Vietnam in the case where they have Lieutenant Cowley, who gets 126 Viet Cong people that capture as innocent citizens, marches them into a ditch in Vietnam, and then orders his platoon he's in charge of to kill them, to shoot them. Some of the members of that platoon refused, others they just opened fire and just slaughtered them all in the ditch, left them there. Cowley and them are tried for war crimes. What have they done in war? They killed the innocent, murdered the innocents. That's not war, that's murder. You kill the innocents.
So
So I mean, in your own army, you can commit war crimes. You can have soldiers that do what? You can have police that do what? You can have priests that do what? You can have ministers that do what? Violate what? The innocents, the law.
So is
You
there,
hold them.
so
See, in a democracy, nobody's held responsible because everything's treated equal. So what you see as a war crime, everything's equal. That's just, we planted flowers and flowers came up. That's like a slaughtered the innocent. They're all the same. Everything's equal. Which means what happens in such a society? What's sacred? Nothing. We only have one truth. But there is no truth. And that's your truth. Everything's a matter of opinion. And all opinions are equal. And who's right? We each have our own opinion, so who's right?
majority.
The majority, if you go with the majority, but each in our own mind, who do we think are right?
So
Ourselves are right. You're right, I'm right, you're right, so who's right? Who's ever got the largest puddle wins for the day, and then what happens when the puddle dries up? You're taken over by the bigger puddle, and you get smashed down. Questions? Candace?
Yes.
So I guess like stepping away from using an actual tyrant as an example of a tyrannical soul, could we apply it to like non-political tyrants, just like everyday people, like criminals or like,
Well, yeah,
like what would be an
No,
example of a non-tyrant?
an example of a tyrant, I mean, a person can become a tyrant if they can't control themselves. So you really have a tyrant, you have somebody ruling you completely. In other words, there's a civil war going on right in you, and your desires are destroying yourself. Addictions are the easy way to see it. And there's multiple little tyrants pop up all the time. It's not as though you're all tyrant and you're not tyrant. Some days are tyrannical days. Your desires grab hold of you, you can't do what? You can't get to class because you're sleeping in. I'm sitting here waiting for you. I have my coffee. I've been up since 6, and then you're because the tyrants know what to you at the moment. Taking over. I'd like to get up. sit up till 4 o'clock, play video games for 4.5 hours. And I'm ready for school. The tyrant just did what to you?
Control.
He ate you, Bo Peep. He took you down. And the next day, there's hope, because you can actually rise up with some self-control and do what? Who do you got to control in your life? The biggest enemy, who is it? Yourself. Speak for yourself. Myself, if I can't control me, I'm gonna need what? You're gonna need law. Because the law is made to control most of it, the people who cannot do what? Control themselves. I'm glad to have a law. Because if I can't control myself, I want somebody to do what? Right. Huh?
Keep you in check.
Keep me in check. My wife's just a tyrannical. My whole life, I've been leashed. 46 years now, I'm on a leash. Left to myself. I had this thing, I was found in the yearbook, somebody said this thing, I've been here forever. But I asked Jack Garrison, who teaches over in Peterbilt, Jack, and me, when we were in our 30s, what would you do if you didn't go to college? And Jack Garrison said, I'd be a truck driver. I said, I'd be a blues guitar player in a bar on Cape Cod. Wouldn't that be a pretty picture 40 years later? But normally, if I was in college, I'd go drink beer and play guitar. That's what I do. What'd you do to go to college? That's me. I mean, well, you like drink beer? Yeah, I do. In fact, mind if I see you in your college and you don't like it? Drop the hell out of college. Get out of here. You want to check out, you want to go live on the beach? Go wait tables in San Diego. You make about $350 a day waiting tables. IHOP or something. Get a surfboard and go live on the beach for 3 or 4 years. You're young, do what? You don't want a career. You want to have fun. Fun. Nice school. Go work in the mountains and ski for 8 months of the year. Get the hell out of here. Decide you want to know what you do this for a career. There's a career day in the 3rd grade. Who the hell wants to work in the 5th grade? Who's running the show? What kind of constitution? You think the capitalists are running the show? Want to turn us all into their little workers to pay us what? We get to work at Amazon? Oh, goody. I'm majored in that? You gotta be kidding. When did you start your first career day? What grade? Huh? You can't even clean your room and already asking you for what? What's your career? A spaceship, driver or something. Would a bartender be one of your options? I want to ring a Taco Bell. I want to ring Taco Bell. Would that be one of your options? No, hell no, you gotta be a fly. Health sciences, oh good. That sounds right. Who's running the show? Which desires are trying to control you? How do you measure? By your job? By your character? We live in a school that just did away with you taking history or literature. It just removed it from your requirements. In other words, you have a generation that doesn't even know the past. They took it out of our general study, just 3 hours. You can take children's literature as your only humanities course in your whole career. That's great. Who's running the show? That's a democratic constitution. The children hate who? Their ancestors, so don't study them, and then they'll go away. And then, who's waiting at the border to get you? You know what's keeping the world in check right now? Putin put his nuclear weapons, turn the button on, they're ready to go. That scares who? Western Nebraska is loaded with silos. What do you think Russia's going to hit first? Ukraine. That will take long. If it ever came to nuclear war, it's all set up. Strategic Air Command, out of Omaha. The president gets on a jet, starts flying around the Saracen place, out of fire. The rest of us, I know you're from Scottsdale. You want to move quick. My point is, the wonderful thing in reading a liberation of something like Plato is you realize, well, if I can control myself, what do I want to be? Well, I don't want to be. Find out what your talents are. Major in what you like. I thought you could major when you're 12. That's a great idea. What do you have a passion for? What do you want to be? Don't even know yet. Good friend of mine wanted to be a surgeon. 4.0, got perfect scoring at MedChat, incredible. Goes into his medical school. The first thing they do is they take the first week of medical school, first 10 weeks, you do a cadaver. 4, 2 on each side, strip the whole cadaver, go through everything. Wonderful thing to do. The minute they cut it to the skull, my friend who wants to be a surgeon passes out. 4.0, the MedChat, perfect. He ends up a psychiatrist. It's okay. But he found out real quick, he never got used to cutting into the skin, which means it's not your talent. Really, don't do this. But you have some nature, you want to be something. What's your career? What do you want to do?
I want to be a clinical psychologist.
Pardon?
A clinical psychologist.
Clinical. Have you done with clinical people before? Uh-huh.
Time or two.
Yeah, well, it's good. It's a good thing to do. Well, you got a good road to go. It's good. You're gonna have, you always have work.
Yeah.
Because we need people who do what? What's the word psyche mean, you know?
You need your internal thought.
No, what's the word itself? Psyche.
So
It's your soul. You look at people's souls?
Yep.
You have a soul?
I think everyone has a soul.
What's a soul?
I think it's internal.
It's internal thought. How does a thought get there? You know, it's thinking. There's always something going on up there. Did you put everything that's going on up in there in
You didn't intend to, or it's not where you're controlled.
there? You didn't intend to, so how did you get it?
Sort of backwards.
Pardon?
You see what you do, you guys.
And what you see, what you hear, what you hear. And can you determine what you see and you hear without there? When all the stuff just comes pouring into you. And at night when you go to sleep, what might happen? You ever daydream?
Yeah.
You get to pick what you're gonna daydream about.
Just kind of
Can you be like that for 15 minutes a day, a week maybe? Just get lost in thought? Are you yourself then?
I think so.
Huh?
What's your thought on that question?
Pardon?
What's your thought on that
I
question?
try not to think. And what's my thought? No, you've got to get where, my gosh, if you're just daydreaming all the time, you can't pay attention, you can't focus, you start your mind, it starts wandering. You got to learn to discipline your mind, because your thoughts, things just come into your mind, you don't want to think about it. And they just come right up before you. And if you start daydreaming, pretty soon you're surfing along. Somebody's talking to you, just going for the whole 30 minutes across your mind, just went somewhere. Where'd you go? Well, you just checked out. So you lost control of what? Yourself. Biggest thing in athletics, is you're so good with athletics, especially when you're playing hardball, they teach you to focus. Why? They're throwing a hardball at you. You better what? You better what?
Watch out.
Anything you're gonna go into, the whole art of what you're gonna do is gonna demand that you can focus on what? The patient, the lathe, the sport, the tip of your pen, the person you're with, you gotta be able to focus on what? And if your mind can't focus on yourself, what happens to you in the process? What desires you feel?
They control it.
You take it, so will it be pleasurable? Yeah, it'd be pleasant. That is pleasant. The first few times they tell me, So then you can't what? Can't stop. Is that addictive, that quick? To the psyche, the soul, everybody's got a soul, or part of your head, you got a mind. Plato's working on the same soul. What's the order of the soul look like? Can the soul be well ordered, ill ordered, go by desires? If you're moving in that desires, what happens to the whole order of your soul? What happens to the order of your life? Becomes what?
Disorder.
Disorder. Even though you're 50 years old, you still act like an 18-year-old. You ever seen what that looks like? With an old man trying to pick up young girls? What's that look like? That's your father? There's an authority and a father figure. What happens to that authority? Where'd he go? Gone. I saw this great movie once, this rough and tumble type of guy. He's out with his buddies, they're working a different construction site, and he sees a girl in the bar, and he goes and tries to pick her up and turns it on, and the girl's his daughter. The movie starts, the fellow automatically is what? Disgusting. The wake-up call, I realized what? That could have been, now it was, but even doing what? Oh, that's just a modern culture. That's not lecherous, is it? No, that's okay. Just his opinion, he's okay. He's a good guy. What happened in his own soul at that moment? What did he see? It's about himself. What did he see?
Own thoughts.
He saw his own disorder, perhaps for the first time, and that was enough to shock him for a moment. It's an interesting movie. This is just a few pages of Plato. It goes on, there's examples, he uses cases, all different, just an illustration, yes.
What's the differences in education between a democratic society and an aristocratic society?
We give it to education. A democratic society, we let the students pick any course they want to take. If we come in and say, here's the courses, you take the ones you want to take. Okay? Imagine what a democratic sport would look like. What position do you want to play? What position do you want to play? What position do you want to play? We each get to choose the position you want to play. There'd be no trainer, there'd be no coach, there'd be no diagram. You just, what position do you feel you're good? Then we'll let you play that. Well, who's going to watch?
I will.
You watch?
I don't know, you guys can decide, I just don't
Well,
watch.
it'd be like if you had a basketball game, you decide, we would be liberating if we did away with the lines. Let's do away with the lines. Get rid of the lines, now we'll play. And you can adjust the hoop as you like while you're playing, okay? However you feel is the right size to be. In other words, the aristocratic soul is going to look like a basketball. In other words, within this ordered form, there's freedom. And once you take these lines away, the freedom you have is no longer there because there's no boundaries. It's like in track, for example, if we're going to, aristocratic education is going to give you subject matters like hurdles. And they're going to let everybody start in their own line right here at the beginning. And we're going to run you out there and you're going to take American history, world history, you're going to take the languages. Is that what you're going to take if I'm running the school? You're going to take sciences, 2 lab science courses. You're going to learn a foreign language. We'll take you overseas and show you that part of the experience. We're going to give you a curriculum. Everybody's got to hit those hurdles. And also over here, we're going to put bars and restaurants and a whole bunch of stuff there. And we're going to start you at the beginning of the track. And the only time you're equal in this whole race is when we fire the gun. And then you get to run the course. Go. There's your hurdle. There's a subject matter that'll discipline your mind. You're going to take biology. You're going to take physical science. You're going to take mathematics up to geometry. You're going to learn a foreign language. You're going to learn the history of the people. You're going to learn literature. We're also going to teach you how to dance. Formal dancing so you control your body. We give you a West Coast swing, East Coast swing, cha-cha, merengue, salsa, por favor, merengue, ojalá salsa rara, mejor, hell, I'm sorry, I grew up, I spent half of my life by the time I was 15 in South America, and somehow or other I learned Spanish. Don't you learn Spanish? I thought I was an Ecuadorian. I was so ashamed because my hair was red. I wanted my hair to be brown. Why? I thought like a freaking strawberry. Once you can speak the language, what happens? You run right in, what?
You communicate.
You communicate, once you communicate. But an ordered education, in other words, and you're free to run, and you're also free to go over here and go to the museum and go to the parties. You're free in school to wander off the track. And how many distractions do you have in college that keep you wandering off the track? This place is set up like a friggin' amusement park. They're always trying to take you away. It's another experiential learning. Let's go party over here. Let's go join the club. None of it has to do with schoolwork. So what are we learning? Did you really enjoy your stay? Was it amusement? Was it a hotel?
Is it dangerous though to have too much control over the academic structure? Because the people in control might not know what the best rounded education would look like.
I guarantee the people who have this education have no idea. This is what's full of fire. It's a fucking PlayStation. You watered it down to the point now, it's ridiculous. There's no admission standards that I know of. In other words, you have to have some standards. You have to know your history. And not every, hey, when you grade people, not everybody gets A's or B's. I mean, sometimes, well, I got through math with a C. Thank God I finally got through math. I mean, they're happy. But I was so embarrassed when I started doing carpentry, I didn't even figure out how to cut an angle because I didn't learn my geometry. Oh, you know, it's like trying to guess what the angle is when you're building a roof. You know what that looks like? Oh, we'll just caulk, we got this big space, or just put caulk. No, don't do that. The building's gonna what? Yeah, so you want them to know geometry, because when you go to build your nation, you want them to know what. I felt I was pretty good in that. The hell with your feelings. We want you to do one. When you go out on a carpentry job, they don't care how you feel about the wood. They want you to do what with the wood?
Cut it.
I don't care if you're not sensitive to cement. I want you to lay concrete. We don't care what you feel about the cement. It's not a relationship job. We're here to lay cement. You got to do it before it sets up, because once it sets up, what happens? You're still standing, which means you just, there's going to be a long night frozen in your cement. Notice, if you don't have any standards, what kind of school do you have? You're going to graduate, what are you going to find at the other end? What kind of work are you going to find? If they played you for 4 years, what are you going to get? Huh? We'll see. You got played. In other words, the teachers are afraid of the students, so they flatter. They tell them what.
So great.
Influence.
That's just the happiness. I can tell you something. I can give you the curriculum in all A's. I'll tell you who you take. You want all A's? I can help you. You ever had classes, you go, what the hell are we doing in here? And everybody gets an A, and then you wonder, and I paid $700 for this? What just happened to you?
Right.
You think? You finish this great meal, you think, we just ate styrofoam. But they told me, well, they have degrees, what the hell? When you go buy a used car, that person seems like your best friend. Guess what? Hi, how are you doing today? Good to see you. Look at this car, it's you. Oh, look at this thing. Oh, right. Oh, this is you. And you go, wow, yours are a lot better than this. Thanks. This is your friend?
So they bought the car.
So you buy the car, and you realize, all they did was put air freshener in it. And they steam cleaned it, and they prepped it out $200. The guy got clean. You think, wow, this one looks new. I hadn't been used much. Nah, it probably hasn't. The thing was filthy 2 days ago. In other words, you were impressed by appearances. And you lack judgment. So what happens to you? You get told. If you don't watch out for your education, don't think all these people are concerned with what you're doing once you leave school. They're not here. Their job is to make the amusement park for you an experience. An experience. Everything's an experience. Last I looked, eating dinners or what? Taking a shower. Going to sleep. What is an experience? We have experiential learning. What the hell is that? You had an experience while you were learning? You're working at Jiffy Lube. They tell you we're doing community service. You're learning an industry, how to manage a business. They got you working, paying money to work at Jiffy Lube. So you can learn to manage a Jiffy Lube. I was worried I would have anything to say. Any questions? So imagine when you say, if the curriculum becomes too strict, imagine if you went out for sports and you wanted to find a coach that just wasn't too strict. What would it look like?
Be more for fun and less for competition.
Yeah, it'd be more for fun. What would it look like? Would it be free for all?
Like Aristotle, he says, you know, virtue lies in the median. We have complete chaos in terms of education, like we talked about. That's not good. And I think what she's talking about over there is like too much structure, like tyrannical order, not tyrannical because Aristotle tyrannical. So her way of tyrannical in terms of literally too much order. It's one size fits all of what she's asked. You must fit.
Aristotle is a great example because he says everybody has their own needs. Everybody has their own ability, what they're capable of doing. And education is supposed to show you what your potentials are and what you, by nature, what talents you do have. So what's going to happen if you have an education that tests your talents, you won't do well in all subjects. And the one you start to do well in is where your tendencies, your propensities, or by your nature, you're able to do. You're a visual learner, for example. You find out when you get into working with your hands and building things come very naturally and easy. We don't want to take you in some places that you're in hard sciences and just working because you're not that type of person. But everybody has a different, they have a different talent, and the talents are realized by what your nature is. You won't find what your nature is until you're tested in different areas. One of my sons, for example, very hands-on type of person. He ended up literally in the construction business, but he should, when he went and got a college degree, he got English, for example, and then he got more than thought. But he went into a painting business. I like to paint, I like because I love the work because I get to be my own boss. His senior year of college, when he was at Nebraska at NU, he made more money than I did as a college professor, painting apartments part-time as a college student, because he mastered what? So his talent, he likes to do that. He likes to work, he likes the intensity of your own boss. Do that. Oh, what's on the career you look at? You want to do health sciences. You're 8. Okay. When you get there and you find out you don't like people. You find this out. You're a nurse. They give you the first job you get there, let you work the night shift. You find out after about 2 weeks, this just what? You might have done well on the subject, but you don't like people. But you want to find what your talent, what you are. It might take a few years. Go work in the world first, then go back to college. So have you amounted to anything this year? Good. Self-knowledge. I've never amounted to anything. Any other questions? Thanks for having me. A little bit of Plato. You take Philosophy 100, you read the whole book and a few other books, but then you get into the ideas. What it does is it helps you to, already you're making qualitative judgments. You see what a soul that has no control looks like and what it would be like. And then other people, what happens if you're trying to control people where they have no say in the matter. Never get tired of it. Worse than that, if you can't control yourself, which can happen to any one of us, what's our life start to look like? But you make the pleasures you have at the moment make you feel pretty good, but what's happened to you? What happens in 5 or 10 years to you when you start looking like?
You're not yourself anymore.
Were you ever yourself?
not since your desires took over.
Could never form yourself because you couldn't control yourself. So what happened to you all the time?
You had no choice. The whole,
And you, what happened? You realize you're getting played, but being played by who? By your pleasures. And your pleasures, they wear away, they change with the seasons of age, and what they found pleasurable one year, next year is what? And you're out of college working at a convenience store, great place to work in Bassett, run a convenience store, how the hell I get there? Well, what have you been doing? Went to college, what happened? Well, kind of got by. Got some major, I don't know what the hell it's called now, there were 256 different majors, so pick whatever you want, it's a crapshoot. You don't need to know the academic subjects. You don't know computers and stuff, learn math. Right? The whole basis of it as well. You know some little specialty of computer science, some little specialization, when you got an intellect that can go which way? Like this, you want your intellect to go, not like what? Narrow it down to one specific little job. Industrial distribution, I started off working in a warehouse, it's a great job. I had a college degree in philosophy. What did I do with my first philosophy degree? I drove a forklift. Why? They wanted me to work in the office because I had a voice, I didn't have a beard, I looked good in the tie, and wanted me to work in the office. I said, I want something physical. I want to move with my body, I want to pick up things and move them. Then I got a job after my forklift, I got excited, I learned how to build hydraulic pumps. At Sperry Vickers, we had hydraulic pumps for aircraft carriers and tractors. And each one of them had a model, and each one of them had one form of them, 18 different models off each one. So you know the pressures and figure all the stuff out and when the test in, which was exciting. Because if you're screwed up, all the hydraulic oil goes where? Why was I doing that? Because at the moment, that's what I was doing. What you do with philosophy? No, you do with philosophy is what the degree does to you. You got it all backwards. You don't do something with the degree, it's what the degree does to you. I didn't go to school to work for some corporation and have them do what to me. And then after 8 years, downsize or sell to another company, you'll be where? You'll be out of a job and looking. You sold your soul to the company stores, we used to call it. Corporation owns you. What do they do with you? One of my friends, he delivers babies. And he found out since a new hospital took over where he used to work, he no longer can deliver babies there because only their OBGYNs can deliver babies. He's a family practicing doctor, and all of a sudden they won't let you deliver babies there anymore. And you're a doctor, so the hospital administrator is telling you you can't deliver baby, and you're the what?
doctor.
The doctor. Because you got a rule and regulation now that's going to instruct you and become a tyrant that does what to the medical profession? This clamps on from above. I'm not some doctor, I'm going to move to Haiti. I'll go to Costa Rica and practice medicine where the people want what?
Good
Just
medicine.
taking care of them, I can take care of them.
Did he really do it?
Hmm?
Did he really do it? Did he really ship off?
Yeah, I know, yeah.
Where you
People
go?
have to keep this left the country. Go someplace and practice medicine. Because you get so many regulations after a while. They strap you. Teach you. You let the administration run the university, or the administration run the hospital, it's not the doctors and nurses run it, it's somebody else, a corporation. And what happens to the people that are there to bring their arts to the people?
Their talents are misused.
Pardon?
Their talents are misused
Your
'cause
talents get misused. Another thing, education or learning is nobody can give it to you. It's like a musical instrument. If you don't practice, you what? You don't get it. So nobody can give you, they give you a college degree, it's nice, but But if you didn't study or do anything, what's it even worth? But if you're studying, what do you have they can't take away from you? Your knowledge, your passions, your love, your subject matter, your love of biology, whatever you're in physics, you've got it. Nobody can give it to you. You can't sell it to a person. At the end of the day, it's wonderful. It's like learning a foreign language. Nobody can give it to you. You have to what? Translate it. It's its own reward. And of course, if you want to mass produce and try to stamp it out and sell it, well, they do. You know what the most radical thing to do with a student now is in the whole university? Read a book with them. In physics, read Einstein. Student. They can read it. In the textbook, that'll do what for you? Keep you away from the original. Don't memorize the speeches of great people. Make up your own speech and give that. What will be the difference?
You learn from the best.
You won't learn from the best. Just make up your own speech. I was telling a student that they took their speech classes, had to give 5 speeches, all of them on the line. What's the audience when they're online? If you're in the screen, sitting in a room, who's your audience?
The wall behind
The
you.
wall behind you. What's the great, I remember when I was in speech class, we all started speech class, we just scared it up. The first time we had to do public speaking, they put 40 of us in the room. You remember doing that, Jeff? Do they still do that? I don't know if you have people in the room. When you first hear the speech, what's it like? When you first wanted out, the first time in your life.
Intimidating.
Intimidating, you what? Nothing comes out. Well, if you can take the audience away from you, what's giving a speech going to be like?
There's no pressure.
And then I got into the speech, great. Now you're gonna get your first job. Hey, we got 100 people coming in, what you get presentation, you want at the first time in your life, what's this gonna look like?
The first speech.
Well, are they helping you by doing that for you, zooming it all for you? We want to make learning so it can be on your time. Let me know when you find a job that you can do on your time. When's that ever happened in the world?
University of Michigan.
We're gonna make education work. We're gonna accommodate your needs so we can take it whenever you want. I never would have studied a lick if you gave me that option. I started dancing at the beer party was a hell of a lot more fun than what? At least at the moment. Well, have a good evening.